Come on.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the only podcast produced by three winners of IMSA's Spirit of the Race Award. This is the Check Engine Podcast. We're streaming live through Anchor.fm or anywhere else that streams good content that you want to listen to. My name is Nick. I've got Tristan and I've got Andrew with me as always, but tonight is a special episode because we have got guests, and we have got special guests for Father's Day. We're actually going to interview dads for this episode.
Interrogate dads.
Interrogate.
Whatever.
Hassle, harass, however you want to say it. So my dad, Steve, is here. Dad, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for the invite.
And Tristan's dad, Ken, is also here. Thanks for jumping on with us, agreeing to do this.
Thanks for having me over.
So, Andrew, with the dads on the episode, kind of tee us up here. What are we looking to get out of these guys?
Well, I mean, clearly there's something very wrong with the three of us, and it had to have started somewhere.
And just after Mother's Day, previously we refused to blame them.
Of course,
so
clearly.
I noticed they didn't have to come in for a grilling. So.
That's because it's not their fault.
No, exactly. That was a plan. They didn't want Nick's mother.
Wow. Throwing shade in the first 2 minutes.
At a point already.
You made a joke earlier, but I have a mute button.
I was going to say, can you edit that?
So, tonight is going to be really exploring the love of cars through the eyes of the dads and how how they developed their idea of car culture and how they liked it. It was passed down to us, any cool stories, things like that. Special Father's Day episode. So we're looking forward to that. But, just like us, they're not pros either. So between the five of us here sitting down, where there's not one professional, but you're all listening anyway. So we thank you for that. But we don't want you just to listen. We need you to reach out to us, let us know how we're doing, what you think. You can start by going to checkenginepodcast.com. We have an email there, inbox@checkenginepodcast.com. That site also has links to our past episodes, our socials, our blogs that we throw up. Anything you need CEP related will be found at checkenginepodcast.com. Do we want to just get into this discussion, or do we have time for a pace lap or two before we really dive into it?
There's just one thing I have to share because I promised I would say it. I promised I would on Instagram. It's a story about... I saw one of the new Camry XSE V6s last Friday. And the only reason it's an interesting story is because there's a world in which I'm not currently here anymore because of that car. So
you're going to need to explain yourself.
I know. So
is it because you were transported to a realm of nothing but pure delights by its amazingness?
Well, it started that way. No,
okay.
All right. So I got a new job in the city of Milwaukee, and it was the last day for all staff. And so we took a little walk around the block, and we're just walking down the road, kind of chatting it up, a couple of us. And in front of us, there's this Camry that just totally blows a four-way intersection, maybe 30, 40 miles an hour in what should be a 25. And my first thought was, oh, wow, that must be the V6 one, because it had the blue and the red interior, clearly. So we hook a right to kind of come down the backside of the block, and I hear that same car coming up behind us. Only this time, there's two people hanging out the side, and one of them's waving a pistol in the air.
Uh-oh.
So, weirdly, no one in the group freaked out. No one shouted he's got a gun or anything like that, which I think was probably good. They just kind of weaved their way past us and continued down the block and disappeared. But that was the weird thing about it was how I could only think of that car and what a good color it was and how I knew it was the XSE because of the wheels. I'm must be something wrong with me. Very seriously.
It leaps to mind that is not the vehicle I envision in the average drive-by.
No, me neither.
Or getaway vehicle.
Yeah.
It seems an unusual choice.
Oh, and this was at 7:45 in the morning too.
Why did you have to go for a walk?
Because we just want to go for a walk.
Okay.
I'm not in an unsafe area. It's basically schools and hospitals where I work. That's basically the only thing around. And a convent. So it's not like a super
nuns.
Yeah, exactly. Not like a super dangerous area or anything like that. Yeah. Very weird.
The car that version of the car would probably make a decent getaway car, though. It's got a little bit of get up in it.
It does a little bit.
Yeah.
It's a 300 horsepower one. So, I mean, it's not, Well, so that was my morning on Friday. And that day is bookended by me driving home at after midnight, and the thing that I'm world famous for, never having been pulled over since I got my license, ended last Friday.
No way. Really?
Oh. Yep. As I was pulling onto my own street, so it's funny because I had been up since 6:45 in the morning, whatever it was. Hadn't had a drink all day. We were at a bar after kind of by the end of the year for most of the staff. And I was just like, nah, didn't really feel like it. And so driving down Sunset in the middle of the night, I just turned left onto the road and right to get onto my street. And I see the car. I see the car's lights come on just as I'm turning left. And just like, shit. I had already fully resigned myself to the fact that this was actually happening. I was finally going to get a ticket the first time since I was driving. So I roll my window down, have my license out. The cop comes up and he's like, "Do you know how fast you're going?" I'm like, "You know what? I honestly don't." I'm just figuring all right, yeah, it's over now. It's been a good run. And he takes my license. He looks like, "Do you live down here?" And I'm literally 2 driveways down from my own. And I'm like, "Yeah, just down there." And takes my license back, comes back up in 30 seconds. And he's like, "All right, go home." That was it. It was the fastest traffic stop in history.
Excellent. Good for you.
Right, well, good for you.
Congratulations.
And he didn't even do anything that might get him shot.
Well, better.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Like get off the motorcycle or out of the car.
Or open the door because the window doesn't roll down.
Yeah.
Oh, happens to me all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Officer Smith was a real professional. So, I mean, it's just interesting. It's one of those days where, looking from morning to night, there were 3 different realities where I in the hospital with a bullet in me, or in jail with a DUI, or dead. So all right.
But you made it out of all 3 of those. It was
and then
a good day.
I came home.
But you successfully completed the last 40 yards to your home.
I did,
and we're good. All right.
Yeah, and then I went to sleep. That's it.
Successful day.
There you go.
Great story, bro.
Very weird.
The end.
Very weird.
You guys have anything else, or do we want to just jump right into this discussion?
Let's jump right in.
Yeah, we can go.
All right. So, Andrew, do you want to kick us off? You want to tee us up as you normally do with this? Or
Sure. I mean, there's really only one place to start when we're talking about cars, right? What was your first car?
The very beginning.
The very beginning.
Who wants to go first? Somebody volunteer.
All right. So, the very first car that counts, as opposed to...
No, it should be the very first
So
car.
the question...
No, it should be the very first car.
Here's the very first
Tristan
car.
did this too on our first episode.
So here's the question that I'm going to ask you. Is it the first car that I drove that I liked driving?
Let's say the first car you would call yours.
Or the first car I owned that's my car?
Yeah, the first car you would call your own.
All right. Well, that would be a 1962 Mercedes-Benz 220 SB.
Wow.
Yeah.
It is a small 4-door sedan. When I bought it, we thought, because back then the odometers only went to 100,000 miles, we thought that it probably had 250,000 miles on it.
Wow.
Turns out
Maybe.
we were wrong, because when we finally rebuilt the engine, the guy who was helping me rebuild the engine said, nah, probably more like 450,000 miles.
Whoa.
So it was a project almost every day. I had always wanted a Mercedes-Benz. To my father's great chagrin, the only thing I ever actually believed him say, because we were always kind of at odds with each other, was when I was very small, he bought me what probably was the cheapest model he could find at the discount store we were at. It was a 1950s era four-door Mercedes sedan, not a nice one, just like the taxi cab kind.
Yeah, the one that they're taxis in Germany.
Right. And when he gave it to me, he said, "These are the best cars in the world."
Ooh.
And I was 5, maybe, at the time. I made a little wooden stand for it, and it was my pride and joy. So when it came time to buy a car, I found a Mercedes-Benz for a few $100, and I went for it right away.
Best car in the world.
Best car in the world.
Still to this day, it was hitting way above its class, considering its condition and everything else. It actually drove beautifully when it actually ran. But it was. If you look that up, it's an interesting car because it had fins.
Really?
Yes.
A Mercedes with fins.
Yes. Late 1950s and early 1960s, American cars were considered the benchmark for styling, and Mercedes-Benzes at that time had fins.
Harley Earl.
Harley Earl, exactly. So little vestigial fins off the back of this little four-door blue Mercedes-Benz. So that's my first one that I actually owned, and that only lasted for a while, and then just quite a cavalcade of cars after that.
Sure.
We moved quickly through several others.
Dad, what about you? What was your first car that you could call your own? Now, you actually drove well before your license. Like, you're old enough to get a license. You might want to touch on that real quick. Like, didn't you do a road trip down to Florida when you were like 13?
Well,
It was a different world, Nick.
yeah, it was. I went with my uncle and his family down to Florida. We went down to Disney World in 1973. It had just opened, and my uncle was very generous and, trusting individual. So I'm riding down with him, and he got tired and he looked at me and says, "You want to drive?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll drive." I was like 13 years old. He had this big Lincoln Continental, and I hopped behind the seat, and I probably drove for a couple 100 miles, and he was sleeping in the front, and his wife and the 2 kids were in the back, and it was a grand time. My dad had a Willys Jeep, a 1960 Willys with a plow, and he used to go to different places, and he would plow the snow in little commercial parking lots, and he would drop me off there, and I'd plow the parking lot, and so I was driving along before I turned of age, I'll put it that way. But my very first car was a 1968 GTO.
Ooh.
Jeez.
And my dad told me I couldn't buy it. And it looked really nice. It looked really, really nice. And obviously he knew a lot more than I did. And I ended up buying a car, and I picked it up. And before I went home with it, I took it to my best friend's house to show him. I said, "Hey, I got my GTO." And I pulled into his driveway, and he comes out and he's looking at it, and we were young. I was probably 16, 17 years old. And his mom comes out and looks at it, and his dad, "Yeah, that's really nice. It's really nice." So it came time to go home and have dinner, and I went and start the car, and it wouldn't start. And it wouldn't move. So my buddy Dave's mom drives me home, and we're sitting there having dinner, and my dad knew that I bought the car because my mom had told him. And he goes, "Where's that car you bought?" I said, "Well, it's over in Dave's driveway." He goes, "What's it doing there?" I said, "It doesn't run." He goes, "You need to get it." And I said, "I don't know what's wrong with it." He said, "Get in the car." So he put me in his car, and we drove to 35th in Oklahoma when Milwaukee Public Library was there. He says, "Go get a book and pull it out, get a couple books, and go figure out how to fix that car because it's got to get out of their driveway." And he said, "That's your responsibility." So hence, that's where I started fixing cars because I had to get it out of my buddy's driveway.
Necessity.
So what was your first problem with that car then?
The first problem was it was a 3-speed, and the shifter jammed between reverse and first gear.
Which is why it wouldn't roll.
It locked the starter, and it wouldn't turn over, and I ended up having to crawl underneath and take the shifter linkage out and line up the shifting rods and put them back on, and then it ran okay.
Jeez.
So
Just a minor thing.
Some interesting parallels. Because first of all, why did I learn how to work on cars? Because I too got a car that needed to be fixed all the time. You get your hands dirty, got to get it fixed. weirdly enough, and you don't even know this story, Tristan.
Oh.
My first driving experience, although it was not on the road, was an uncle who put me behind the wheel of his 1962 town car, Lincoln, full-size Lincoln, and let me drive it back and forth when we were up on vacation in Wisconsin, up on the back road, just kind of up and down the road a couple times. Two uncles. Two Lincolns.
Well, now it's a 3 Lincoln story because
It's evolving.
the following year, and my uncle lived in Lincolnshire, and he was a stockbroker. He worked at the Merc in downtown Chicago. So we take the Lincoln, the big Continental that we took to Florida. We drive it downtown, and I went to work with them, and I got to sit up in there's an observation thing where for the Merc, he was a trader. He's down on the floor. And he said, I'm buying a new car. I said, okay. He said, so on the way home, he says, you're going to drive my other one back. And
There you go.
so we went to the Lincoln dealer, and he bought a 1974 Lincoln Mark IV.
Oh.
White on white on white.
Oh.
So we're sitting at the dealer. He signs all the papers, and it was Italian. The dealer was Italian. And, my uncle made the deal, and the guy says, come on, I'm going to take you guys out for dinner. So we went to some Italian restaurant in Chicago, had the meal, come back, and my uncle throws me the keys to the new one. He says, follow me home. So we went from downtown Chicago to Lincolnshire, and I was 15 years old driving this brand new Lincoln.
You got to drive the new one? What?
Up the tri-state?
Up the tri-state.
There you go.
Right up there.
Beauty.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Why do you give the keys to the new one?
It was a different time.
Yeah.
Yep, I'll say it again.
It was a different time. So, like, those are the first car stories. We got an idea of why you needed to start working on your own cars, but like, what was the point, if you remember, where it was more than just like a car was just something to get you to a friend's house or to school or to work? Like, it wasn't just a mode of transportation, but it was something more about cars that really drew you in. What made it more than just a mode of transportation? Do you remember, like, when you really started to fall in love with the automobile? Was it before you started driving? Was it after you got your license? Whoever wants to go first.
I don't remember it, but I was told that my dad had like a 1954, 55 Cadillac 4-door. And my dad didn't have a lot of money at the time, and he couldn't afford to drive it, but he was so proud of that car, and it sat in the garage. So I was 3, 4, 5 years old, and I would go out and I'd sit, and it had a steering wheel that was the size of a bus. And I drove that thing from coast to coast every day in the garage. And my mom told me that I would nap in that car, and it had like those wool seats.
Yep, the wool seats.
And I'd be laying in the back of the car taking a nap when it was nap time. And I just loved playing with the car.
It's getting weirder. Because you remember, you've heard this story. My oldest memory of a car, the oldest memory I can pull out of a car, was my great-grandfather owned the land, some of which became Woodfield Mall, down in that area of Illinois. And his original farmhouse is still on Addison Road, a little distance away from it. And you can still see that house. And behind that house is a 10-car garage. It's the old machine shed for the farm. My oldest existing memory of a car was visiting my great-grandfather, and I could not have been more than 3 or 4 years old. And he had a mid-50s Cadillac.
Oh, Jesus.
They had the gas cap was under the taillight on that one side.
Yes.
That was
What
one
a
of
weird place for... Can I just say, what a weird place for a gas cap?
It's completely bizarre.
Yeah.
There's a guy, I read it online not that long ago. He had a 56 Chevy, all restored, very proud of it, older gentleman, and he's in some town out west. Well, somebody steals his car. He and his wife come out of this restaurant or whatever, and his car is gone. They call the police. They can't find out the guy's just distraught because his car, his pride and joy is missing. Well, it ended up only being a few miles out of town because it had run out of gas. But the guy that stole it didn't know where the gas cap was because on a 56 Chevy, like a 56 Cadillac,
It was under
you had to swing the rear taillight open, and that's where the gas filler was.
Yep. I remember.
So it's security.
So I'm not the only one that thinks it's weird, apparently.
You and all the car thieves.
Yeah, exactly. I'm in good company.
It didn't run. So all the men, including the 4-year-old, pushed the Cadillac back into that garage. I remember that car, and I remember pushing that car back into that's my earliest car-related memory. And so, yeah, I mean, that's, as far as being excited about them, again, I don't know when that started. I do remember having nightmares in the late 60s and early 70s because back then they informed us in no uncertain terms that there would be no gasoline within like 8 or 9 years. We were running out of oil and there would be no gasoline. And I was just very, very worried that I would never get to drive a car because there would be no gasoline.
So was the nightmare like, oh no, I have to take this horse to school?
It'd be a nightmare that I didn't get a chance to drive. I want to drive. I want to drive.
I wouldn't drive at all, ever.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So,
Man, that would be the worst.
Yeah, it really would be the worst.
That would be awful.
We'd be like the Czech feedbag podcast.
That's
or something.
exactly what I was going to say. Unbelievable.
Do you want me to keep rolling down the question
Yeah,
list? Or Tristan,
sure.
do you want to chime in here? You've been kind of quiet today.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a particular, order to these. I think I think it's one that should go last. But let's talk about. Let's do the past. Is done. Let's move on to the present.
Sure.
What is your current dream car? I know, Dad, you and I have discussed this actually relatively recently, conveniently enough.
Did you drive it here, Ken?
I did not.
Okay.
In fact, one of the when I was buying that car, the salesman was standing back with Joanne while I was going all over it, and kind of soft voice said, "Yeah, well, is this going to be his toy?" And she looks at him and said, "No, he's going to drive it every day." and yeah, that it's a great car, and I love it.
Well, tell the nice listeners what you drove.
I have a 1996 320 SL Mercedes-Benz that I've been driving around in recently. It's a ton of fun, and I've enjoyed it immensely. For years and years and years, the car that I was going to get one of these days was going to be a 928 Porsche. I love that car.
Okay.
I love that car. It was supplanted recently by the R8.
Like recently is when that was released, or when they went to the V10?
Shortly after it was released, because I was driving another Audi with essentially the same engine in it, and I just really, really love the 4.2 liter V8. And
dear listeners, you might notice a theme.
That was the replay of exactly what he said last week.
Right. Yeah. So there's something about that power plant in that particular car that just that it feels more correct. It feels like the current version is a hot-rodded version of the original concept.
Sure, putting the bigger engine in
10
it
and
ruined it.
Yeah, not ruined it. There's nothing wrong with hot-rodding things. In fact, the car that I had with the 4.2 in it was a hot-rodded version of the car
the normal A6.
Yeah, normal A6. So nothing wrong with that. It's just that I think in my head I'd want to get one with a 4.2 in it.
That makes sense. Steve?
It's hard for me to say because I just love cars. I mean, I love old, late 60s, early 70s muscle cars. I love the old Jags that we were talking about. Older Porsches. I love Duesenbergs.
Wow. Way back.
That was a listener submission for the Iconic episode.
It was, yeah.
Someone, a listener said, "Hey, you missed one, the Duesenberg."
The Cadillac Lacells with the V12s. I mean, stuff like that is just cool. You don't see it that much. The big side mounts, stainless steel exhaust coming out of the hood. That's those cars at purpose. I really like those. If I could have a 65 Shelby Cobra,
wow,
I would love it.
Right to the top.
A 69 Z28 with 4-wheel disc and the 302, and that would be awesome. I have my Eleanor. I have a 69 Corvette. that I bought when I was 17 years old, and I had it for 10 years. I sold it not long after Nick was born, and 25 years later, I found that car and I bought it back. So that's a toy.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's cool.
That's a phenomenal story. It's like he didn't buy another '69 Corvette,
He
like
found-
numbers matching the same freaking car he bought back.
Yeah, no one in the intervening years had wrecked it.
Thank God.
Right.
It actually,
She's a crotchety old bitch, as you can see from the.
yeah, she bit me before.
Oh,
so,
really?
Oh.
Yeah.
Is that what happened?
Yeah, I got burnt on the exhaust manifold.
Jeez.
Oh, man.
So
What were you sticking your hand under there with it?
Yeah,
Ron?
what are you doing?
bad plan. Yeah, I sold it, and it was 26 years until I found it and bought it back. And the individual that bought it for me had it for 2 years, and the guy that had it, that I bought it back from, had it for 24 years.
Oh.
And in between me selling it and buying it back, she only had 8 more thousand miles on it. So,
Oh, wow.
But he didn't take real good care of it. It took a long time to kind of get her back to where she is. But it's been fun.
But you'd rather, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
If it was perfect when you got it back, there wouldn't,
Well, that
there
was
would be
just it.
that redemption story there.
I mean, I bought it in February, and my goal was to get it back on the road by the 4th of July. And, like June 30th, I rolled it out of the garage. So it was good.
All right. There we go.
Perfect timing.
Made it. So would that classify this is a great transition here. Would that classify, Dad, as like your proudest car guy moment? Like, is it like an impossible fix that you didn't think you'd be able to pull off, but you did? Or is there
In the
like
middle of a road trip.
or is there yeah, I mean, is that your proudest moment as like a car lover? Or is there something else that we don't know about?
No, I fixed the bus at school one time.
Oh yeah. I remember that story.
I was going to UW Waukesha, and I was in a geology class. And it was a Saturday field trip. Doc Flagger was his name. He was about 90 years old at that time, Dr. Flagger. And there were 2 school buses, and we went from Waukesha up around Neenah, Oshkosh, kind of circled around, and we're looking at dirt or something. I mean, it really was...
Clearly was an educational opportunity for the record books.
I really didn't like the class. Didn't much care for the class, but we stopped somewhere, and okay, we did what we did outside. Everybody got back in the buses. Boom, one bus starts, the other bus doesn't start. And we're like standing there, and the driver didn't know anything. And he's like turning the key, it's cranking over, wouldn't go, and everybody's just kind of looking. So I opened the hood and started tinkering around, and the distributor had come loose. It was a gas bus, not a diesel bus.
Sure, yeah.
And I twisted the distributor a little bit and had the guy fire it up, and it started, but it was running real rough, and I kept turning it until it got smooth, and we made it back to Waukesha.
Oh,
So-
yeah, that's a good
That's a good one.
That's a good one.
So I actually have to superstar to everybody on that bus because I got
Right.
to get home.
That's right.
The most popular kid in class.
And I passed.
There you go.
There you go.
Take that, Doc.
Take that, Doc Flagger.
That's
I mean,
awesome.
Things have broken down so often in so many places. I'm trying to
I'm trying to pick up just one.
This is just one. Man,
It doesn't have to be a fix, I guess.
Yeah,
but-
just, I mean,
Just
like,
a car guy moment.
I will say this as a. I think I was just starting college, and I went to a concourse at the Allstate Insurance headquarters, which you can see going down to Illinois, and my father-in-law was with me, and he was into the Duesenbergs particularly. He knew a guy who had like 3 or 4 of them. And he had a couple of his cars there, and I was wandering around the paddock, and there was a guy with this really, really nice Ferrari, and it was looking really good. And I'm just doing my leaning in and looking at stuff, and I look at the cockpit, and I go, aren't those Jaguar gauges? And I got run off by like a 60-year-old guy who was really, really angry about the fact that they weren't video gauges in there.
Oh, okay.
He had put Smith gauges in there because they probably fit in the dash. Sure. And so, he's going to certainly he's going to lose points if somebody noticed that.
Right.
And so, I got chased off by this guy with this Ferrari.
What do you think no one else was going to notice?
Because my brother had a Jaguar, and I intimately knew what all that stuff looked like because we were constantly working on that
because you had
thing.
disassembled it and reassembled it about
We'd
1,400
been
times.
taking that apart a few times on our own. Yeah.
So you're telling me that whole lovely story, but you're not telling me your proudest car guy moment
I think that was it. Getting run off by the
is not driving down the Pennsylvania Turnpike, blowing gunk out of the fuel filter for the Volkswagen.
Oh no, that was in Shenandoah actually.
Yeah.
Okay, so we had gone up camping from DC up into the Shenandoah National Park, and apparently the Shell station where we stopped right as we left town. This was after the first diesel binge when we tried to do diesels and then they fell out of favor. Mm-hmm. They had obviously converted their diesel tank to gas at some point, and it sucked up a bunch of diesel and put it in my little Volkswagen Rabbit. Well, we didn't even actually make it all the way up into the mountains before it kept clogging and stopping. Fuel flow stopped, and it occurred to me that the filter, the gas filter, kept clogging. So every 15 or 20 minutes, all the way back to down to where we lived, you would stop, unbolt this fuel filter, blow it out backwards.
Yeah.
All this junk would come out of it. Put it back on, drive it again. When I took it to a friend's house who had a garage, and we took the tank down and we drained it, and we dipped a rag into the stuff that came out of the tank. And when we lit it, it didn't really burn as such. This kind of glowed blue. And it was. Yeah, as far as rescue goes, that was
almost literally mouth-to-mouth resuscitation on the car
right,
all the way home.
Driving back in 2 a.m. in the Mercedes when the generator failed, and so I would stop at gas stations every couple hours and ask them to charge up the battery again, so I could put it back in the car and then drive another couple hours till the next truck stop and have them charge the battery up. I've had a collection of
ice storms in at least 4 states.
Oh, at least.
Yeah. Yep.
At least.
Jeez.
Yeah.
So what's next on the list? I don't want to ask all the questions. I want to get everybody involved.
You got one, Andrew?
Sure. Well, we're already kind of on it. So, we're talking ice storms and fuel
Fixing
filter
school
resuscitation. So, what other big fish stories do we have? Who's raced and beaten a Ferrari, or street race Steve
an epic
McQueen
road
or
trip, something you should have never gotten away with, but you did, like
here to Florida in 3 hours, that kind of stuff. What do we got?
Wow.
We're putting you on the spot here.
Yeah, you don't need to be modest. It's okay.
Well, the first Florida trip when we got the A6 was a good one.
Yeah, because the normal run time for that trip should be about what?
Well, with 2 small children, we averaged on that drive, and that was before speed limits went up, and we averaged 78 miles an hour.
Yeah, that was in a 65 mile an hour speed limit era.
So we averaged.
Was this the Forest Green A6 that everybody loves? Yes.
Yeah. So that was an average 78 mile an hour run, but that's not as good as my friend's dad when they moved to Colorado. Because he bought a ranch in Buena Vista, Colorado. At the time, I was living in a suburb in Chicago. It was exactly 1,000 miles from door to door, and he had a 500 cubic inch Eldorado, and he made it consistently in 10 hours.
What?
Consistently in 10 hours.
For those of you playing the home game, that is an average of 100 miles an hour.
And that was before the 55 mile an hour speed limit was in force. So,
that's crazy because they weren't fuel efficient. So he had to stop for gas right off.
Oh yeah, he was stopping for gas every.
Because
3 hours.
the gas gauge looked like the clock on those things.
Yep.
Yeah. So 10 hours, probably at least 6 or 7 or more fuel stops.
So he would have to be going quickly from the first stage. But remember, he doesn't actually get down out of the mountains until Denver.
Right.
And then it's nothing but Nebraska and Iowa pedal to the metal.
Let's see, 500 cubic inch would be what, like 6.4 liters?
Oh, no, keep going.
No, 7.2.
Is it in the
7.2 is a 400.
No, 6.6 is a 400.
We had a Pontiac that was a 400, and it was It was a Grand Am, and the Grand Am was
It's
It's a 6. What do you got?
I'm working on it.
Well, I was thinking of, but no, I had that wrong. I was thinking the current Challenger is 6.2, which is 392.
Right.
So
It's a 6.5 liter.
6.5.
400.
400.
Yeah.
Okay, then they must have.
Pontiac called it a 6.6. So
Yeah.
the cat.
Okay,
the
so that
Cadillacs
must
were
have been
7.3s.
That must have been a 450 in the one we had then, because it had a 7 liter.
That's such a big engine.
Oh, they're awesome. They run
yeah.
so smooth.
Oh yeah,
They're
effortless.
Yes.
Effortless. And the Eldorado was not a small car.
Right, yeah.
Now,
front-wheel drive with the turbo 400
Front-wheel drive.
transmission turned sideways.
Yep.
That's how wide that car was.
You can put the transmission head sideways.
Why would you do such a thing?
The engine was front to back mounted normally, and the transmission was 90 degrees over.
Yep.
Jeez.
A
Front-wheel
turbo
drive.
400, big transmission.
Wow. All right. That's exciting.
So, and yes, and that's the sort of thing that in a previous episode you picked the wrong year.
Really?
Because when you're talking about land yachts, you went to 75.
Yes.
Possibly the worst year.
I just picked the middle.
Right.
Yeah.
You go a few years earlier, and things were far more impressive for their day.
Yeah, you were talking about, what was it?
Well, that was also before the gas crisis,
Right.
so it was
Sure,
73,
You said it
right?
was, how much was that?
Yes.
Was it the New Yorker,
Yes,
or what was the one that had a...
The New Yorker,
We had a 440 in it.
the New Yorker had a 440, but my grandfather put the police package in it.
Oh,
Yeah.
did he?
So it had high-rise pistons and
Yeah.
it was turning out a little over. It's right around 400 horse. So
And that's when you go to the gas station, you could get 100 octane premium.
Yeah.
Leaded premium because they really needed that.
yeah.
They have that.
That car had a
Naperville
3-speed transmission at 75 miles an hour. If you stamped down on it, because the headrests hit you about right here, your head would kind of do that. And that was at 75 miles
And
an
a
hour.
car that weighed roughly 900 tons.
Yes.
It would click down into 2.
Oh, yeah.
Just put this down into 2 and
3-speed transmissions.
wow.
This just sounds so utterly bizarre. I mean, I know that they're real, and I know that I've actually seen this. It just sounds so weird.
Like you would go minutes between shifts.
Oh no. My grandmother,
Even better.
who always wanted cars with pep
Yes.
and was constantly
Tristan has
being
mentioned that.
tried to roped in by her husband, got a 1968 Skylark 4-door with a 375 Wildcat engine in it.
No kidding.
2-speed
speeds.
automatic.
Oh, got the old power glide.
That was the best donut car ever.
Dad, do you have one of those just insane car stories that comes to mind?
I have 2.
Yes.
Well,
Content.
and one's not insane. It's just that the brother to my uncle that let me drive the Lincoln,
So another uncle.
my another uncle, he bought in 1978. He bought a Mercedes 450 SL, and he spent half his time in Wisconsin, half his time he was in Boca Raton, Florida. And he ordered the car when he was in Wisconsin. It was supposed to be delivered here, but there was a delay, whatever happened. So it ended up being delivered to Boca. And it didn't get there till he was coming home for the summer up here. So he calls me up and he says, there's a ticket in the mail. He said, you're going to fly down here. I'm going to pick you up. He said, I'm going to have you, because he had another car there. He and my aunt had another car down there. He says, fly down here. And he says, my other car showed up. He said, I can have you drive one of my cars back. I was like, okay, I can do that. So I fly down there, and I'm thinking I'm going to bring his caddy back, right? So he hands me, at that time, if you got a gasoline credit card, it was for all the different stations. They didn't have Visas or Bank America. So he hands me a pack of credit cards, and he goes, your aunt and I are leaving tomorrow. He said, we're going to take 3 days to get home to Wisconsin because we're stopping here and here and here. He says, when I get home on the 4th day, that car better be in my garage. And he gave me the keys to the Mercedes.
You must have been like the careful driver of the family, right?
Well, then you're going to hear this story.
You would think.
My cousin John, who was the best man at my wedding, he and I were out one night, and we both worked for the same company, worked for a vending company. He had a company car. And we were out, we were doing some drinking, and we were having a grand old time, and we were at his girlfriend's house, now his current wife, and we ran out of beer. Snowstorm, right?
Party for the
Boom. So we go up 27th Street. On 27th and Loomis, there was I don't know if it was a grocery store or a liquor store or whatever it was, and we pull in there, and we're in a 1978 Ford Fairmont. That's his company car. It was the car of the future. That's what Ford called it.
Until it rusted out 2 days later.
Yeah, it's split in the middle.
Hey, tomorrow is the future.
Yeah, that's all future. Come on.
They're not lying.
So we're in the parking lot, which hadn't been plowed, and it's snowing, and he's like doing donuts with us. And we are laughing. We're just laughing because we are a little bit tipsy. And all of a sudden, he gets a little bit wide on his donut, and he hits the cement pole that's holding the light pole. Oh, no. Bam! Crashes the side of the car. And for some reason, we thought this was funny.
Oh, yeah, it's hilarious.
Well, I think I can think of one reason.
And we're sitting there, and about 30 seconds later, we hear this, whoop, and the light bulb fell off the pole, and it caved the top of the car. And our boss's name was Larry, and he goes, uh-oh, what am I going to tell Larry tomorrow morning? So...
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's good. I'm good.
You're good?
We're good.
All right. Tristan, what's next on the list? Are you looking it up?
Yeah, I think we can do... What do you think of car culture today as it stands? Take the whole picture. Everybody from people like Grandpa who are going to car shows to look at Duesenbergs to people hitting each other with Mustangs, leaving cars and coffee.
Are those not
To kind of put it in perspective, I feel like car culture, I think the introduction of all this technology in cars, while it's very convenient, I think it's a factor in the shrinking of like the overall car enthusiast, because it's making driving less of an enjoyable or like hands-on experience, and it's turning cars into, this is kind of an extreme comparison, but like it's swaying that that pendulum like more just like almost like public transportation, just get you from A to B. Like there's no feeling behind it anymore.
Would you say it's a commodity?
Well, if it's a commodity, then everybody should want it. So
Unless
Ford
you're
should
Ford.
keep making those.
Well, I think a good example of what you're saying is, my new job is now, my commute's now 40 minutes. And most of the people where I work now live, like biking distance, and half of them walk. And it just blew their minds. It's like, I drive about 40 minutes, and I choose to not get involved with the freeway so I can actually be moving somewhere. And they just all looked at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, well, I don't know. I bought a car that I like to drive, and then I proceed to then like driving it, even if it is in traffic or whatever. It's just like, I don't know. It's not that big a deal. But that, I feel like that's more and more common. People just don't get that,
Do you guys agree? Like, what's your opinion on it? It doesn't seem like car culture was as strong as when you guys were younger. Like, what's your opinion on it?
I think cars, that are made today, the manufacturers were forced into making the cars that are as good as they are today. I mean, there's not a brand that you can buy that shouldn't conceivably get you 100 to 150 or 200,000 miles if you do what you're supposed to do with them. Back when Ken and I were growing up,
The odometers only went to 100,000 miles.
that wasn't the case. And, he and I, we came about out of the same roots. You didn't have the money that you had to spend on a car. It wasn't going to get you, you're putting points in it and condensers, and you had to change your spark plugs all the time. Now you can drive a car for 200,000 miles. You have to change the spark plugs. You change your oil and your transmission fluid and put tires on it, and it goes because the computers took it over. The point tinkering with your car to make it faster, cooler, or whatever. Yeah, now you can chip it and you can do things like that, which I think kids are doing a lot more with diesel pickups now.
Yeah.
They can make diesel engines do so many things that they couldn't do years ago. It's incredible. But that diesel market's small. So I don't know. You look at the kids driving some of this stuff, and they got the big fart cans on them, and it's just, to me, it's not the same as when I was growing up, and I know that I'm a generation and a half away from where they're at, but I don't know if they get the same enjoyment out of driving a car that I do. They like the radio louder than I like to listen to my engine, not the radio.
It's funny you say that because
That's a good point.
It's funny you say that because I actually just had that discussion with you the other day, where it's like, well, I know I turned the radio up too far because I'm forgetting to shift.
Yep.
Because I'm not listening to it anymore.
You're not listening to the revs.
Yeah.
So, cockeyed optimism is not my strong suit.
Oh, no, really?
And so,
Is it not?
but I keep trying to remember that 90% of the people out there, when you ask them, what do you want in a car? Don't want what we, as that other 10%, are looking for in a car. Okay? Car culture. I have a little bit of an advantage because my own father did not change oil. A big thing for him was occasionally he would rotate his own tires.
Ooh.
But he was not a car guy. He was not a mechanically inclined person. He could fix stuff around the house and he was good with, that sort of thing, but he was not a car guy. And I grew up with someone who was not a car guy. And the fact is, most people don't view cars in this way.
Well, they're just not well-adjusted human beings. That's all.
Car guys, they were proud of having a new car every few years. You want to show that off, but it was more of a competition of badge engineering to a great extent. It's like, well, I moved up from, because I was Mopar, no Newport this time, going for the New Yorker. No more Polaris, gonna get that Monaco this time around. And that was your extent, was that your knowledge of that infinitesimal difference between these various different nameplates to indicate what where you were in that strata and what you knew about cars. Maybe more guys fixed their cars because as a percentage of your personal income, cars were very expensive and kind of expensive to fix.
Correct.
More people could fix them because they were simpler. But a lot of people that would just basically fix their cars would not consider themselves car guys.
Sure.
They were just guys who had a car.
Yeah, versus you're automatically considered a car person now if you can even change your own oil.
Right. Or if you care about
Yeah.
driving and whatnot. So I don't despair too much. There's still, given the internet, and yeah, we all laugh about the cars and coffee things, but those are hundreds of little gatherings where people get together because they really like their car, which never happened much. There wasn't, you wouldn't go driving on a Saturday and have like 2 or 3 gatherings of people with cars.
Yeah, and then some of them were just regular ass cars.
Right.
Yeah. They're like, but I really like it, so I'm going to go show it off.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm not despairing too much. There was an interesting article I read just recently that the collector's value of trucks has gone through the roof and is increasing much more rapidly than the collector value of cars.
Right.
And that is a function of the fact that guys your age are now getting to the point where you're interested in getting cars. And when you were growing up, because of tax laws, emission controls, and safety, a lot of the people that are your age grew up in households that had sport utility vehicles or trucks because they were less expensive to buy. This was a artificially created environment which made trucks more attractive, they had much higher profit margins for the car companies, and therefore the car companies marketed the hell out of trucks. When I was a kid, somebody said they own a pickup truck, and you're like, oh, well, which farm do you work on?
Exactly.
But
Andrew still thinks that way.
But
Yeah.
Well, and you're talking about the tiers of the cars. You look at General Motors in their heyday, And they had it covered because entry level was Chevrolet.
Yeah.
Then you could move to a Pontiac.
Yeah.
And then, next one, I'm going to get an Oldsmobile or a Buick.
Or a Buick if you were really rolling.
Yeah, and then holy cow, if you hit the Cadillac plateau, you were the guy,
Right.
So they had all those tiers of consumers,
And it was the
covered.
knowledge of that and the way you expressed yourselves non-verbally by
it's like
the
a
decision.
status
And those
symbol.
decisions are coming.
It was cars were status symbols.
And those decisions are coming very rapidly. We had a very long trip to California when I was a kid, and we were driving in a 1965 Chrysler, and this was in 1969. We put in a radiator and brakes before we got home. That car was 4 years old, and it was kind of used up.
Jeez.
It was a tired car at that point. It had 80,000 miles on it. I mean, this was an old car. And, so these cars are flipping much more rapidly. You're making these decisions on a regular basis. And when you're into cars, it's because you have to be thinking about that on a more regular basis.
But also with that, the car that you took to California, radiator and brakes or whatever, you look at just the products that we put in the cars, like the oils and the greases, the synthetics and the polymers that they put in the oil and the fuel that you burn, the tolerances in the engines when they make them. That back then cars were a throwaway. I mean, you get your 80,000, 90,000 out of it. It was going to the junkyard.
Yeah.
People go steal an alternator out of it for $15 if they want to buy it. Right. And that's what they did. You would take your car to the scrapyard. The junk dealer would give you $200, and it'd sit there, and somebody come buy a wheel or two, or take the spare. You get the
bring your
alternator
toolbox
off or the starter. Yeah, you brought your toolbox along. If you broke your steering wheel, you go take the steering wheel off or the radio out. So they pick it and make $400 or $500 off everything they sold, and then they take it to the scrapyard and get the steel price for it, because that's what they did. That's where people got their parts.
You'd always buy the hood, because the hood was cheap and you could carry everything else out with it.
Yeah.
It was like a giant tray.
You could put a starter, an alternator, a master cylinder, the radiator, everything would go in the hood, and you just carry it.
Carry the whole thing out. The hood was only $5. So you just go there with a friend and a toolbox, and you'd get everything you needed, and you'd carry it out on the hood.
That's so weird.
And so honestly, a lot of it, especially on your side, I expect a lot of the history. I feel like I know a lot of the stories, but that's been the first real surprise for me so far, is because normally when you hear people who are a generation and a half ahead or something like that, there's a very consistent chorus of, nothing's built to last, everything's throwaway, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. In
comparison, saying that, oh no, these cars were throwaway, they were 3-4 years, 80,000 miles, and they're tired, they're worn out, versus, the new cars, it's like if you take care of them, they'll go 150, 250,000 miles plus. That comparison is I'm surprised to hear it, honestly.
Well, it was the
it's
Japanese
true.
forced that into cars because they built those. If that didn't happen, we'd still be having cars that we toss out at 80 or 100,000 miles.
Between that and the Europeans.
And Europeans also, yes.
Both of them. They were building cars for economies that were not like the United States.
They couldn't buy a new car every 3 or 4 years.
Correct.
And they had to build with that quality in mind. And I think if you talk to anybody who's really knowledgeable about cars, one of the things that always leaps to mind is that the crummiest car that you can buy today, the least expensive, crummiest car that is legal to buy in the United States today, will outperform 80% of what came in 1968 or 1969. It goes faster, it stops better, it handles better, it has better fuel economy, it has way more horsepower per cubic inch. All of these things are vastly better than the cars that we love. We love these cars because we grew up with them, and they have a lot of character, and there's a lot of it. There are good things about them, but if you just take sheer quality of the car itself and its ability to be a car, even the crummiest, inexpensive car that you can get out there actually does a lot of stuff better than those cars did.
Well, in a big factor in that was the oil embargoes in the 70s. They had to do something that we had to get better fuel mileage. They'd close stations on even days, or it went off your license plate.
It went off your license plate.
Yep. Yeah, you could only get fuel on certain days.
If you had an odd number, it had to be an odd number in the calendar to get fuel, and you were allowed $3 and stuff like that. And they said, well, we have to make these things run better, and
that's still kind of a fight they're fighting today too.
Well, when you and I were growing up, whoever thought there'd be a computer in a car?
Right. I mean,
Whoever thought there'd be a computer
the
early on? I mean,
the 1970
I was happy I got an eraser for my pencil, and I had computers.
the 1971 Chrysler, the vaunted, the much beloved and venerated 1971 Chrysler, which was the car I used to bomb around in, was the first. Well, that wasn't the first because they did it in an Imperial first, but it was the first car sold in the United States with ABS in 1971. And that came because Chrysler was doing research in Alabama with NASA, and they were doing microprocessors, and they were learning to do some of this, anti-lock brakes were for aircraft, and they were bringing that technology into the Chryslers. 2 or 3 years later, they came out with the first electronic ignition.
Yep.
Which was, by the way, a complete nightmare. But it was an electronic ignition, and it got rid of the points and condenser first, and eventually all the rest of that stuff.
But it would overheat, and then the car would...
Well, they put it, the first one that got it was a little car we like to call the Volare, or the Aspen, the Dodge version of it, and they mounted the computer on the firewall, where water would trickle down into it, and it would short out and kill the car.
Whoops.
Because it would rust right there, and water
the more
would
you
get
know.
into it. So there were some quality control
Learning
issues.
experiences.
In 1957, Chevrolet put fuel injection on a Corvette as an option.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
So they had the technology. I mean, they ran it up a cable drive off of the distributor, but they had fuel injection. But they had it in airplanes in the 40s. I mean, it was a new technology, but they just never chose to do it because gas was cheap.
Right.
And,
Why?
it was very expensive to put on.
Boy, that
Run
would
a
have
carburetor.
been
Right. They
throttle
put a
body
turbo.
injectors?
GM put a turbo in a Firebird.
No.
Port injectors?
Yeah, they were port injected.
Yes.
Really? Whoa! And
They were in the
57?
intake runners.
In the intakes, yeah.
Yeah, intake
I
runners.
wasn't sure if it was throttle body injectors.
No, no.
Like the halfway or like an actual.
No, it was actual injection.
Yeah.
Mechanical.
They're just
That's why
mechanical.
But it was mechanical.
That's why when
very
it came,
finicky.
That's why when it came around later, the EFI badges were a big deal once it was electronic fuel injection.
My 1977 Volkswagen Rabbit was the last car sold in the United States that burned leaded fuel.
77?
77.
Because I thought 75 was the
70.
catalytic. Well, that was with the American cars.
American
the catalytic
cars.
converter.
American cars could not control the fuel flow.
Right.
So they used a Bosch mechanical fuel injection system that metered it enough to pass the emission standards with leaded fuel. And which is why when it got a load of diesel fuel, it was not happy.
Very displeased.
Right.
But that was completely mechanical. And if the plate that was floated by the intake vacuum got even a millimeter out of the exact center of the airflow, it would not work.
Robust.
But I only had to adjust that in the 130,000 miles I had that car. I probably only had to adjust it 2 or 3 times.
Still though, that seems like
Volkswagen got a bum rap when they got that big penalty and that fine for not passing on for the emissions at an idle.
Yeah.
Whatever they tweaked their computers to say at an idle.
Yeah.
The car got 50 miles to the gallon. How much can it be polluting if it gets 50 miles to a gallon of fuel?
Yeah.
That was such a scam.
Well, it was it probably slapped them enough to get them going on the electric cars that they're going to have to build anyway. So
See the most recent
All's
very
well that ends
penitent
well.
commercial.
By the way, this is a hardcore GM guy giving VW a shout out right there.
Well, it's particularly egregious in that in the ensuing 4 or 5 years, we've come to find out that absolutely everybody with a diesel engine was doing this exact same thing.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
we talked about it on the show, Chrysler was under investigation for it.
Oh yeah,
FCA.
no, it's everybody.
Yeah.
Yep, it's
everybody.
everyone now.
The only thing is now that VW, went through all the court cases, everyone's just going, oh yeah, yep, here you go. There's up on the checkbook, and like, what do you want?
Well, in what has to be one of the most throw me in the briar patch moments, Volkswagen was sued billions of dollars, had to pay billions of dollars to create electric charging stations
That they need.
which they're going to use for their cars anyway. So they're basically paying their fines, rolling out the infrastructure that they were planning to use anyway.
I have thought of that. Seeing like the press releases, but yeah. So I mean, that's actually a good transition. So what is the future of the car? Are we buying electric vehicles? Are we buying hydrogen power? Where are we going?
Autonomous.
Oh yeah, autonomous vehicles.
We all know that's not it.
Yeah, we all know that's a lie.
Just throwing
We
out
don't want
another
it to be it, but it might be it.
I work in an environment where I would call into question allowing a computer to actually have my life in its hands while I'm hurtling down the highway.
Well, yeah, you work in IT too.
Yeah. So there's
Like,
there's no way that I would fully trust software. I mean, it can enhance that experience, and it can. I mean, when cruise control came out, we all remember the brouhaha about, oh my God, you can't even hold the pedal down yourself. I mean, well, now we all use cruise control because actually it's quite convenient and it's, it's less tiring and, it keeps you consistently going on. Some of these things will continue through, but no, I doubt sincerely that they'll be able to handle the sort of traffic you would have in a city or something like that.
The same thing that Ken's dad and my dad said when they said, holy mackerel, we have blinkers or directionals, and we don't have to put our arm out the window anymore.
Exactly, right? Right. Some of these things will actually enhance that experience for when you don't want to deal with it. Stop and go in rush hour. Why would I not want my car to do that for me? Mm-hmm. That's perfectly acceptable, and a computer can handle it just fine. You're hardly moving.
Mm-hmm.
That's not...
If it does screw up, you don't immediately die.
Right.
Yeah.
So whatever.
But as far as electric goes, unless batteries change, it's going to be difficult. The wildly optimistic ads that talk about how exciting it is to have an electric car because they all go 200 miles almost now at this point.
All right.
I don't think properly take into account my January 25th commute.
They do not. I can tell you that.
True story from this weekend. I have cousins in Las Vegas that sold their home to a person who lives in the LA area. And deal was set. The only thing that this person had to do was come and just do her final walkthrough or whatever. So she had a 1:00 appointment to come to the home in Vegas to look at it. She leaves at LA at whatever time she leaves. She ended up stopping. She has an electric Beamer. She has to stop 3 times to have it charged. She didn't get there till like 4:30 in the afternoon. She's 3.5 hours late because that 200 miles it was supposed to go, I don't know if she had the air conditioner on, whatever it did, it loaded the batteries to the point where it didn't maintain or it didn't hit the mileage mark it was supposed to do.
Yeah. Well, it's probably warm. I mean,
well, it's hot,
really
and then
it's hot. Yeah, I mean, you're going across the desert.
You're
It's hot.
driving
It's
through
100.
Inland Empire, California.
Yeah.
It's really
It's
hot.
110,
I mean, even if
115 degrees.
even if you don't have the air conditioning on, hot lithium-ion batteries are not super happy.
Right.
Even if you're running with the windows down and just sweating it out, it's still going to not go 200 miles.
Right.
Yep.
So until that technology changes, and I am not necessarily predicting that it won't. I mean, someone will come up with something brilliant, and perhaps electric might be the future.
Ultra capacitors.
But the question I have is
Hey,
if I get that advanced,
saying it, calling it now.
if I get that advanced with battery technology, I may also be that advanced with solar technology, things of that nature. Which, we could go to hydrogen using the exact same technology that we have. I like it. It's loud, it roars, it goes fast, and it could conceivably get a much greater distance between charging cycles. It'll be fun to see what comes about. I'm not going to be fooled like I was in 1969. There will be cars 10 years from now.
Well, yes.
Okay?
Yes.
I mean, I'm not going to fall for that again. Okay?
Fool him twice. Shame on him.
But what they're going to look like, will I like them better or will I like them worse? I don't know. I've gone from liking great big giant American cars to liking teeny tiny little cars because they were fun to drive and got good gas mileage, and went back to kind of somewhere in between as I got older and needs changed and desires changed. So, I imagine something will come down the road and I'll like that too, because I like to drive stuff. And I think it's going to be really hard for them to take away my ability to drive it.
Yeah.
Let's hope.
Even with autonomous cars, I think it's going to be very difficult to convince people that you cannot control it at all.
Unless you live in Japan.
But they have robots.
In which case, once you get to a certain age, they won't let you drive cars that don't at least partially drive themselves.
That's not a bad idea.
That's already happening.
Well,
That's why we live here.
Yeah. right?
I'm probably okay with that. After my grandma ran over my grandfather, we,
With the Buick?
no, this was with a big Chrysler.
Even better. Really get them. Really get them.
So you got to make sure.
Eventually, you do want to take the car keys away, and I hope I'm smart. And I hope I'm smart enough.
Yeah.
I hope I'm smart enough that when that time comes, and I hope somebody else is smart enough that when that time comes, that I can use something that's autonomous.
Right.
That'd be great. But I don't want to be the only place to drive my car as some theme park.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. Obviously.
We got how much time? I mean, how are we doing on time? We got time
We
for
got
more.
plenty of time. Yeah. Yep.
Can I just veer wildly off topic and ask this question? Steve, is the C8 a real Corvette?
Oh my God.
No.
Oh, we have a vote.
The engine belongs in front. It's got the badges. I understand why they did it, but they could have. Nick and I talked about this a lot.
I figured you had.
Call it the Firebird, call it whatever you want to do, but to me, that's.
What do you think about Indy moving the engines to the rear of the car?
Ooh.
Indy.
They didn't call them the same thing.
IndyCar.
You know, the cars
the
that drove in
From the
Indianapolis.
Roadsters to the.
Yeah, I mean, Indy moved the engines.
But it was
they
a
moved-
different manufacturer.
Yeah, well, they had multiple manufacturers all along.
That's a totally different. That was for racing.
Yeah.
This is the Corvette. This is an icon. That engine belongs in front of you. You step on the gas, your foot's got to be pointing towards the engine when you hit the gas. I don't want to go backwards. And
Just drive it backwards.
Yeah, there you go. Problem solved.
Drive in reverse. That still wouldn't work. You'd still be pointing the gas pedal.
I mean,
away from the
I'll
engine.
probably love the car. It comes out July 19th.
We're like a
18th.
month away now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we're-
a month away to reveal. I'm sure I'll be in love with it.
C7 orders close in 9 days, Nick, just in case you want
You
to.
better hurry up.
Yeah,
I'll get
slip
one
in
used.
there.
But I had a hard time swallowing that when it came. But what are you gonna do?
Look,
Apparently,
And I've been-
set all of your merchandise on fire and
I would never do that.
hold a sit in. And
He will.
Yeah.
Nick will.
I've been saying this for a while. Like, Andrew, to your point, GM has an opportunity to do something miraculous with this car. It's probably not going to be in the first. I don't think it's going to be in the first iteration because GM just doesn't have that much experience designing and making mid-engine cars. Period.
True.
So it might not be until the 2022 version or something like that. And yes, a mid-engine sports car that could cut the price of an NSX in half and still hit the same numbers. Amazing. Just call it something else.
Yeah, that
Just
was-
call it something else.
That was my theory, Steve. That what if the C8 comes out, the first ones, not the Zoras or whatever they're going to call the top end. What if it matches an NSX around a track for half the cost?
And so from the outside looking in, not being a Corvette guy, it seems like if you don't call it a Corvette, that's just a slap in the face. If they're gonna design and build the best car, the fastest car, the most desirable car that Chevrolet can build, and it's not a Corvette, then what is the Corvette doing? It seems like it's a slap in the face. That's why I was like, it has to be. You have to call it that.
No, because I would
That's,
argue
you know-
that the Mustang is still the most desirable Ford, but they made a car that's better.
Yeah, they made the GT.
They made
Well,
a GT,
right,
which
but-
is a mid-engine supercar, 500,000. Now, granted, on our episode, our rank list, we agreed it was kind of shit.
Hated it.
But the idea is, the Mustang is the most iconic car in the Ford brand. That is still a front-engine V8 muscle car, quote-unquote. They made another car that went above it. Mm-hmm. Called it something else. They didn't make that one the Mustang.
And look how well that worked.
Well, I guess
I don't
Yeah,
know.
but it's not the same.
you know. Here's where I have sympathy for Nick and Steve is when they came out with the Charger. I'm a Mopar person. They came out with a 4-door Charger.
Chargers don't have 4 doors.
They don't have 4 doors. They just don't have 4 doors. I mean, it is a configuration that you associate very strongly with that particular name. And they made, even when they made the world's worst chargers, and some of them were amazingly bad. Go to Wikipedia, because some of them, after they got through the early 60s and threw the nameplate on, Dodge Cordobas and a couple of other things, and little Mitsubishis that they slapped charger nameplates on.
That's the craziest one.
Yeah.
They were all 2-door cars. They were not 4-door cars. And so I sympathize with the fact that a configuration can be something attached to the label. And I disagree with the GT, because the GT is a very limited production supercar. Mm-hmm. If they want, this vehicle is supposed to replace a relatively high production accessible sports car. So they are stuck. It's not like the GT. They don't get a chance to throw this thing out there and say, this is a Halo
We're going to
car.
make 200 of them if it doesn't work, whatever.
Right. They're in a bad place. General Motors is in a bad place. They had to make a decision about how they wanted to handle it. And I don't know that it's impossible to make a world-class sports car with a front-engine drive, because a lot of people do. There are a lot of world-class sports cars out there that use a front-engine, rear-wheel drive configuration. But somewhere along the line, someone decided that they needed to make this jump.
See our ranking episode. Right. Where did all the front-engine, rear-drive cars go?
To
level C.
Yeah, exactly. When we're talking about
right, I remember that program.
When we're talking about on track, run the list of those front-engine cars in top racing classes.
That's when companies started broadening their board of directors from just, in this case, car people to, they bring in people from banks, they bring in people from insurance companies, they bring in people from all over the place. And
that's actually another really good point.
But you know what I fear?
They're not car guys that are making these decisions.
You know what
anymore.
I fear, though? The Corvette decision was made by car guys.
That's what I think, too.
Yeah.
I think the Corvette decision was made by car guys who... These guys have been watching this Corvette for ages, and they've been thinking to themselves, they want to build a Ferrari. They want a mid-engine car. They want to build something that's more
exotic. Then go work in Italy and build them.
Well, and this is the thing. That's my fear. My fear is that it wasn't a bean counter because it's expensive. Building mid-engine cars is not cheap.
I don't think this does not smack of a bean counter decision.
And it's certainly not some marketing guy, because he has no clue.
You know what would?
Hey.
I think it's more the marketing guy than anybody else.
You think it's a marketing guy?
I think it's a marketing guy.
Bean counters, no, because the bean counters would put a twin turbo 6 in the next generation Corvette.
True.
But you're right.
Then I would set my flag on fire.
I'm calling it now. They will. There will be a twin turbo V6 in the Corvette before this generation's out. Anyways.
Well, yeah, because if you look at the Indy cars, they're running 6-cylinder, twin turbo 6s now.
Oh yeah.
And it's got a Honda badge or a Chevrolet badge on it, but that's just electronics. That's not the actual engine. That's like
Honda actually, I think, builds their own, but Chevy is Ilmor.
Most performance brands are also going to 6s with turbos.
Just to reduce the reciprocating weight going up and down. They do that.
Yeah. It's interesting. I thought you might say no to that.
What was it? Mercedes just came out with a 510 horsepower 2-liter 4.
What?
It was just announced.
AMG?
What the AMG?
It's going to replace the 6s in the AMGs that they're currently making.
God, imagine the timings on that.
They have it on a stand. There was a picture of it on the stand, and it's pretty amazing.
Wow.
You guys are computer guys, and this actually freaks me out. I have a good friend of mine that bought a Hellcat.
Oh yeah.
Okay. And he's got 2 sets of keys for it.
Yep.
Oh yes.
You started with the black key, and it's got 480 horsepower or whatever.
Started with the red key.
Started with the red key. It's got 708. The key is telling that thing what to do.
Yep. Exactly right.
He wouldn't let me drive it. I don't understand.
I mean, out there in the driveway.
Did he hear the story about you and John in the parking lot? That's probably why.
And that was just a Fairmont.
Car of the future.
Car of the future.
I mean, I've got a little iPod-sized device that if I tell it I'm going to feed it 100 octane, 60 horsepower without changing any parts. I mean, that's the way it works.
But really, if the easiest way to just imagine this is that There's
actually a little man under the hood.
You don't have to open up the carb, reset the timing,
Oh,
readjust the valves, all the things that you would normally associate with bringing that horsepower up in the day is controlled now by the computer. So simply informing the computer you want to make those changes. So, and why would you not have 700 horsepower all the time? Well, first of all, it's insane. Second of all, fuel economy and drivability and everything else.
well, it also protects the car and the engine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because you and I would do stuff like that and drive it like
And
that
we
all
would
the time
blow it
and
up.
Bounce it
blow
off
it
the
up.
limiter and
Bam.
I knew a guy that would just...
That's how you learn.
I got good at putting clutches in my '69 Chevelle at SS396, and because I didn't care what my tax said, I just kept going.
I knew a guy who had one supercharger, and he'd bolt it on a Volkswagen until it blew up, and then he'd take it off, get another engine, put it on the other, and he'd just keep bolting the same supercharger on the same Volkswagen. On the same chassis, he'd just get another engine, put it in there, put the supercharger in. We'd have fun for maybe 6 or 7 months, and it'd blow up, and we'd get another one. You can get a Volkswagen motor for a couple $100, and
It's true.
The supercharger was more expensive than the motor.
And you can change it 2.5 hours.
oh yeah, it took no time at all.
That's insane.
If I've got one more father-son car culture question before either we get out of here or we jump into rapid fire.
Rapid fire after this one, and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay, so do you guys have car stories involving myself or Tristan, like you're involving us, whether it's a funny story teaching us to drive or working on a car with us, or like, my earliest memory, one of my earliest memories is Dad is actually sitting on your lap and we were watching, I must have been 4, maybe, like kindergarten, preschool, and we were watching a NASCAR race, and I remember it was a concrete track. It was either Dover or Bristol, and you were pointing out who all the drivers were, what car numbers were. So like, what's a story about, me and car culture, like the two of us together?
I got actually 2 of them. We went. You were really young, and Mom had that stupid blue hat on your head.
I gotta get pictures of this stupid blue hat for Facebook.
We'll post that on Facebook and Instagram. A stupid blue hat.
And he had help. I had a '63 Corvette split window, and Nick had helped me wash it. He always helped me wash my cars, and we were going to go for ice cream to the Kilty.
Oh yeah.
And it only had a lap belt, and I wouldn't let her put the car seat in it. So I set him in there, and I put the belt
not
on.
cool in a '63 split. Right? I don't have a car seat in there.
And Debbie's like, "Oh my God, you got to put his car seat in." I was like, "We're going to the Kilty. It's 3 miles away. We're gonna be fine." But I was shifting, and you put your hand over and you want to help me shift.
Oh yeah, I remember doing that.
Right.
So he grabbed my hand while he's, "What are you doing?" Because he'd ride with Debbie or the other cars. He didn't shift, but he wanted to help me shift, which I thought was really cool because he may be only 5 or 6 years old. No, less than that. You're probably three. Because you still had a dumb hat on your head. And then fast forward 15, 16 years, and I'm teaching him how to drive stick in the same car. So I drive it over to Olympia, and he gets in it, and he's driving through Olympia's parking lot and Kmart's parking lot's adjoining, and he's kind of got it. He's doing pretty good, and he says, "Okay, let's go out on the road." So we go out on Summit, and we're on 67 going south, and we get to where
the standoff was.
Right there. But there's Farm and Fleet is there now, and Pick and Save and all that kind of stuff. There's a stoplight. There's a little bit of a hill. I said, "Okay, Nick, remember what I told you? You gotta give it a little more gas and easy on the clutch and let her out." And he's like, "Yeah, I got it." He's doing good, and he's really nervous because we didn't have much of a hill in the Kmart or the parking lot over there.
And there's a car right behind him.
He
didn't want to roll.
He didn't want to roll back.
Or B, roll back and hit somebody. I don't care about that person, but this is a '63 split window that I'm in.
So he probably gasses her a little bit too much, and I said,
Probably.
and the light's about to change, and it's busy. It was probably, we went at the wrong time. It's 5, 6 o'clock. We're a lot of traffic out there. He says, "So let the clutch out and go. She'll go. Don't worry about it." Well, he lights his sucker up, and he's going sideways.
Just dumps it.
Saves it. I mean, he did a great job, and I'm looking at, there's a cop behind us.
Yes.
Pulls it through, hits second gear, and away we go. So that with you and I together in a car, those were really fun. Those were good times.
The time when we went to the store for Mom.
That was actually going to be my next question, but I think you jumped right into it. I'm going to flip this around after you tell stories with Nick. Nick, what's your favorite story with your dad that you remember?
Well, just on that the memories in the 63, during the summer, we went to the Pick and Save by 16 and the bypass.
Plank Road.
By Plank Road. And we got the essentials. We got Oreos and beer.
Oh, there you go.
Got it.
And the car at that time had some trouble starting. So we might have needed to bump start it. There was a possibility of that. So he made sure that he parked in the very last, you pulled into the parking lot, the first open spot, the farthest away you can get from the store, because no one's going to park in front of us in case it doesn't start. So we come out of the store. There are 700,000 open spots. And there's a car in front of our car at the very end. And it wasn't like a nice car that anybody needed to protect. It was like an 84 Caprice or something. And sure as shit, the 63 does not start.
Of course.
So now, in order to bump start it, we need to wait for this person to move their vehicle. And that person must have been shopping for a group of 200 people, because it took them like an hour to get out of the store. So we just sat there and ate the Oreos, waiting for that person to come move their car.
Come on, be honest. You drank the beer too.
I wasn't driving. You were. I wasn't driving. You were.
Actually, with that car, it had an electrical issue somewhere where I ended up putting a new wiring harness in it. But Debbie and I went to Chicago, to Lincolnshire, to like a baptism or something like that in that car. And it was like springtime, and she didn't want to go because, it was going to be really hot, and, it didn't have air conditioning or anything. But that was actually a car you go down the freeway with the windows down, and you didn't get a lot of, it was a nice car. So we ended up taking it. And the baptism's over. We come out. We're going to go. Click, won't start. So I said to Debbie, I says, you can do one of two things. I says, you can push me, and I'll pop the clutch, or you sitting here, and I'll tell you what to do, and you can pop the clutch. And she goes, I'll push, you pop.
The similarities continue.
Yeah, Joanne pushed that Mercedes many times.
Yeah.
I put 2 starters in that thing before I got done with the electricals eating themselves alive. And yeah, she spent quite a bit of time pushing that Mercedes around.
Yeah.
But she refused to be the one to actually be the pop starter. She's going to be the push person instead.
Do you guys want to share stories, or do you want me to do the flip around on the question first? How do you want to run this?
Sure. Go ahead and flip around. You rolling already?
So, car culture, the stories. Well, all the times I would go, quote, help my dad in the garage. Like, he's obviously, he fixed a school bus on the fly. Mm-hmm. Like, he's a better mechanic than I will ever be, and I wanted to help where I could. I'm not as good as he is. Still not, like I said, won't ever be. So the extent of most of the time when I would help my dad, quote unquote, was I stood over the top of him and just held the light.
That's helpful.
And just got yelled at because I wasn't shining it in the right spot.
Never.
Obviously.
You never do. No. That's why I ended up just giving him a light that just sticks to the car. I got a Rover for the Father's Day sale.
No, I got the hood light that
I have that too.
You gotta have that. That's awesome.
We have that.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
So when they announced that, I'm like, that's my dad's Father's Day gift, because then I won't get yelled at anymore. He can just clamp it on the hood, shine it where he wants. He doesn't need me anymore.
It is amazing.
It's great.
What he got me, though, there's a little one that's like, somewhere just south of Sun. And it's about this big. It's got magnet on both the end.
It's a AAA
and
Rover.
Oh.
Awesome.
And when I was working underneath for this last repair, I could never get the light exactly where I wanted, because you're all working around that spindle, and the thing's never really in the right place. I said that is going to come in handy next time I'm underneath there. But the hood light, it's like working out. It's like working outside, right? You always love working outside in the day because you can see everything.
Absolutely.
Well, now you can.
You work outside at night,
right?
Yeah, so I always remember getting yelled at for not holding the light in the right spot.
Yelled at? Really?
Scolded. Fine.
Corrected.
Corrected enthusiastically. Yes.
And then there was the time I came home when I was driving the Chrysler, the Bullet, and that there was that little deflector, that black deflector piece
over the windshield wiper arms.
over the windshield wiper arms, and it was missing.
Why, Nick?
Why was it missing?
Don't worry about it.
Not important anyway.
So I thought, yeah, he's not going to notice. And I pulled up the driveway, and of course he was out in the garage, so he could see me pull in. I thought like he'd be in the house or something. He wasn't. So I got out, and I was just, hey, and I was going to walk in the house, and just like from behind me, I hear, where is it? Where's what? He's like, you know what I'm talking about. Get in the car and go find it. Yes, sir.
And did you find it?
I found it.
Hey!
I was back home in a half an hour, and he was waiting, and he had some little sheet metal screws and a drill, and he didn't say anything. Like, I parked the car, he put it down and went, brrrt, 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 get in the house.
That's not going anywhere anymore.
Next time, bring the whole car back.
I'm just going to bring the whole car back next time.
Yeah. Don't bring it home in separate runs.
I thought you were going to talk about the one with the bumper when you hit somebody at school.
Or there was that one.
Also sheet metal screws.
No,
No?
hair dryer.
Hair dryer.
Oh, there.
Pop it back
yeah.
out.
Because you had the Trailblazer had the rivets.
On the
Putting
bumper,
some-
that
yeah.
was from something else.
Yeah.
That was another story. We don't have time for all my
All the
stories.
stories, no.
You can't tell all
Your
the
turn.
stories.
It's their episode. I don't want to talk the whole time.
All right. So, first question, driving type thing associated.
Driving
Anything associated with Tristan and
Yeah.
cars.
The two things that really leapt to mind. You were not all that interested in cars when you were younger, which was not terribly disappointing because I knew that my dad hadn't been. So like there was a disconnect there anyway.
maybe it just skips a generation.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, I like
Grandpa, then me, you,
Yeah.
and then me, the same
Right.
as Grandpa. Yeah.
So, but I wasn't really worried too much about it. But we went just for fun. It was completely off the cuff, not planned at all, to go see the Audis, the R8s, at the dealership in over on
International
Autos on Highway 100, and you got super excited when you found out you could go see them racing the next weekend. And so and we got free tickets.
Yep.
And we got to park in the Audi corral. And so
it begins.
it begins. So that was it was a very memorable moment. It was like where something clicked for you, and suddenly this was way more exciting than you had thought previously. So that was like this kind of the change that occurred when suddenly you and I were just more interested in cars collectively. And then that followed up with the going down for training in Atlanta. And so, we go down, we get to do the driver's course. It was great father-son bonding, tremendous amount of fun, get to drive really fast around a racetrack, get to do the craziest accident avoidance maneuver stuff because you can. And then we're heading home. And we get to Nashville where there is, 8-lane wide expressway. And you're just barreling along, you're driving, I'm in the passenger seat, and this big dually pickup just right into your lane, just from right next to you. And you did every single thing exactly like they had just taught you. And we weren't even close to actually having an accident. We would have been just run over.
Yeah.
If someone had not been doing exactly what they needed to do in that particular situation, he would have just ran us right into the car. And you did instantaneously without any, with no excitement, no yelling. You just bang, 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 did everything exactly the way you needed to do that. And I thought, well, this entire weekend just paid for itself.
Yeah, it just kept us out of the hospital. Kept us from buying a new car.
Right.
Yeah.
Return on investment.
But it was so much fun and very parental pride moment to watch how quickly you learned all that stuff, because I had to admit I had not taught you these things. I mean, these are things I had picked up more from experience, so I had never taught them properly too. And you learned them and used them almost instantaneously. So those are my 2 big car memories.
Tristan, flip it around.
Actually, for me, what I was thinking of immediately was the first part of that story is when we were at International Autos looking at the Audis, and I found out I could sit in them.
Yeah.
And they pull the steering wheel out, they let you sit in the car, and they put the steering wheel back in. And I'm sitting there jacking the steering wheel back and forth, pretending I'm a race car driver. And the look on your face from outside the car. That's what I remember. Like he knew what was happening.
Like a knowing smirk.
Yeah, knowing smirk, kind of proud moment.
Yep.
And then immediately leapt out of the R8 that they had there to go sit in and was like, where's the next one? And then we went to go find the DTM RS6 that was in the next showroom. Yeah. And I couldn't get into that one, and I was very disappointed. But that's the moment that sticks out as the most important car guy moment. But the one that sticks out was when we were coming back from Florida for the first time. I drove after I could drive. I drove a stint between you and Mom being in the passenger seat, and you were in the passenger seat and you fell asleep. Now, anybody who's driven any significant distance with my dad knows that doesn't happen. He's a absolute co-pilot. He's on the lookout. He's pointing stuff out. He's giving you directions. He's changing the music, and he fell asleep. And I hit a rumble strip, and it woke him up. And he's like, "Wow, I fell asleep. That doesn't happen." And I was like, "Why doesn't it happen?" He's like, "Well, I'm never comfortable enough letting anybody else drive on their own. You must be doing a good job." And that was in the feels car guy moment. It's like, wow, I actually do this pretty well. So those are my 2 moments.
There you go.
Yeah.
If I could just add one thing, not in a car, but when the first time, 10, 12 years, first time you started racing go-karts? How long ago was that?
I was freshman in high school, so man,
and
14 years ago?
We had a struggle racing go-karts because Nick wanted it to do this, and I didn't know how to make it do that for him. And you talk about communication and things like that, and he would come in and be frustrated, and I had a dad moment, and I said, you're not Tony Stewart. Get over there and pick your card up and get it over here, and we'll figure it out. And what we worked through to get him from a kid that really didn't know much to someone that was really determined to do well and kind of drag me along to make it do better for him. I was really proud of you at that point too.
Yeah. Thanks, Dad. Aw.
Well, let's lighten the mood,
Let's lighten the mood with some
and wrap
rapid
it up.
fires. Ready?
All right.
So these are first thought that comes to your head, no explanation needed, yes, no's, either ors.
And we'll round robin these questions. We'll just work our way down, and everybody grab the next one. So
So
are we taking turns answering?
no, both of you.
both of
answer.
you will answer, but we'll just take turns asking these questions.
All right.
So Tesla, in or out?
In.
Out.
Really?
Oh, first in.
Because I'm going to the factory.
You know what?
Really?
We're going to the museum and when I go to Serbia next week.
Oh, like Nikola Tesla, not
Yeah.
like the Tesla car company.
Oh, yeah. Tesla car.
Oh, I'm moderately in with Tesla, the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was pretty smart.
Okay, next question.
Go.
Camry or Accord?
Accord.
Accord.
Yeah.
Ooh. Who can eat more wings, Tony Stewart or Juan Montoya?
Oh, Tony.
Yeah, Tony.
Ferrari F40 or Porsche 959?
Porsche 959.
Ferrari.
Yeah.
Tristan, that's the best Ferrari, right?
It's
Objectively the
it's
best
certainly
Ferrari.
the most overrated Ferrari. All right, you've got
We did that one.
you've got one race. Who are you picking for one race? Schumacher, AJ Foyt, or Richard Petty?
Oh.
Sentimentally, I have to go with Richard Petty.
Mopar.
Yeah, right.
I got to go with AJ Foyt.
I mean, I would say my sentimental is Richard Petty, but if I had to put somebody in a car for any kind of race whatsoever, it would be AJ Foyt.
For the same reason. I mean, Schumacher was phenomenal at what he did. Petty, over 200 wins in NASCAR. AJ Foyt drove everything.
He drove everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it had wheels on it, he raced it.
I mean, it'd be AJ Foyt or Mario Andretti would be the
Or
person.
Mario, yeah. I mean, another good
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Let's stay on NASCAR then. Better driver, Jeff Gordon or Dale Earnhardt? Senior. Senior, yeah.
Yeah, Junior.
Dale Jr.
Dale.
was not written. It looks
You know,
Dale, because he didn't care.
I would go Dale. I mean, I have some questionable behavior, but I'm going to go with Dale.
This isn't on our list, but I'm just going to ask this because we asked this of Josh, and I plan on asking our other guests too. You have one lap at any racetrack in any car you'd like. What car on what track? You driving. You don't have to pick a driver. This is you in the seat. That's not really rapid fire. I mean,
So that's
but
that's like
Wow,
that's
this is,
Nick's Nick's deep thoughts TM.
Right. Oh, man.
Oh, God. Sonoma
really?
or Sonoma or Road America. And I don't know what car I'd want to go in.
Sonoma is gorgeous, though. It really
Yeah,
is.
we-
super
yeah, it's
pretty.
phenomenal.
All right. I'm going to waffle too, because I'm going to take Road Atlanta or Road America 917.
Nice.
Okay.
That's a good
Nice.
I'm going to kill myself.
one. But what a way to go.
He didn't say. Luckily, he
Died happy.
He didn't say, Circuit de la Sarthe in a 917, so he should be okay.
He should start flying. Well, that's
Yeah.
Mercedes.
Monaco would be third, right?
Monaco would be third.
Okay. Me too.
Monaco. Ooh, yeah.
Ferrari or Lamborghini?
Going red, baby. Ferrari.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Lambos.
That's really surprising.
Okay.
Yeah, it's tied in with the rest of my obsessions.
Toilet paper rolls spin forwards or backwards? Yeah,
So, like, is the
Well,
loose end going over the top, or is it coming
I
down
thought
the
we
back?
had settled this. The patent picture has been published.
is this a thing? Is that
It is.
Look it up.
Yes.
The original patent for a roll of toilet paper. The picture has been found, and it comes towards you off the front of it, not
It
behind.
has to. I think it definitely has to.
Yes.
Back.
I don't deny people their ability to innovate.
Because that way you can tear up, for God's sakes.
You just have to get not Russian toilet paper. If you get ones where the holes work, you just tear across and it just comes undone. What are you buying?
Non-Russian.
Soviet toilet paper.
It keeps going down. You tear up and you're good. All right, next question. That was a dumb question, Andrew.
Was my question?
He put that on there.
It was my question. Andrew just asked it. Favorite pizza topping?
This is recent. Actually, I'm not going to go recent.
Wait, he lied.
I'm going to go with an innovation that we developed around the time you were born. Dill pickles.
Ugh.
On a pizza?
Absolutely.
That's your favorite?
They're delightful.
That is madness.
It is. It's not as bad as pineapple, but it's madness nonetheless.
It's close.
You are gross.
I've never
Sausage.
even heard of that.
There was a place in Grand Rapids that actually offered them. My wife loves dill pickles on anything and everything, so we ordered it one time, and I was hooked almost immediately. They're very tangy.
You have to take her to Piranhas in Daytona Beach and go get the fried dill pickles.
Okay, because we do that often when we're traveling. But I'll definitely
They
definitely
are
get
crazy good.
anything with a good reputation. We'll head there.
Okay.
Dad,
We drive
favorite
in the
pizza topping?
area from time
I
to time.
said sausage.
Oh yeah,
sausage.
he snuck it in there.
Oh, I didn't even hear.
Bam. Mushrooms next.
I mean, that's all the good rapid fire questions we have. Otherwise, it's just going to be like this,
I think we handled them really well.
this brand or that brand. Yeah. Our first.
Can we come back?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
we got to do this
is
again.
fun.
This is great. I think I'm done with them if you guys are.
I'm done. Yep.
All right.
Yep.
Steve, Ken, thank you so much for joining us.
So I think that's the only thank you this week.
sure.
Well, all dads,
Right. Yep.
because it is Father's Day. So, guys, happy Father's Day.
Thank you.
to both
Thank you.
of you. Thank you for your insight into cars and, well, into life, because you're right about everything.
Finally. Took him 30 years, but yeah, finally.
Mom, Nick said it, not me.
So, thanks to our dads, thanks to dads everywhere. Thanks to everyone who always tunes in. Even if we suck, you guys are always awesome. This episode didn't suck. This was a good
This was a good one.
So if you want more Check Engine Podcast, we are on the socials. We're on Facebook at Check Engine Podcast. We do have a Twitter handle, which is...
At Check Engine Pod.
And we also have an Instagram handle, which is...
Check Engine Pod.
At Check Engine Pod.
Yep, that's it.
That's what it is.
Yep, it's always that.
Not enough characters for the full name. So at Check Engine Pod. So find us there, comment, let us know what you like, what you don't, give us some ideas for future episodes. If you're really, really into what we're doing, we also have support pages. We have one right on Anchor. There's a support button there. We also have a Patreon page, patreon.com/checkenginepodcast. Everything that goes in there comes out as things that will make this better for you, the listener, whether it be better microphones or we're going on more trips that we can produce more content from or anything like that. We don't just pocket any of it. So we'd love your support. Thank you in advance. Another thing, reviews. Reviews are the lifeblood of podcasts. Good reviews move us up the list on searches. So if you could take 3 seconds, give us hopefully a good review on Apple or anywhere else that you're allowed to review podcasts, that'd be great. Until next time, we cannot wait to talk to you again. Again, happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. And enjoy Le Mans this weekend.
we go.
Biggest race weekend, second biggest race weekend of the year.
There you go.
Whoa, there was some sacrilege going on there for a moment.
So he's within smacking distance now.
We'll talk to you soon, everybody. Take care.